Thank you. This is our February meeting. Let's take a look at the agenda and skip around a little bit because we have with us today our city manager who will give us an update on the parking issues. Could you, Paul? And you can give us just a brief overview without getting into comparative details or
Yes.
or analysis, what the process was and what it yielded.
So we went out for competitive contracting. We had 5 different vendors respond to the city's proposal. I mean, one of the basic tenets in the proposal was that that any fees, any processing fee, merchant's fee associated with credit card processing or fees, all had to be paid by, the consumer or the person parking, so that there, whatever the parking fee was, if it's $1.50 an hour, the city would receive $1.50 an hour. So all proposals were, kind of came in and complied with that. There were some vendors that, for signage, there were some costs for signage from a couple of the different vendors. So, we had a technical review of that with staff earlier this week to kind of review all the proposals. And we're hoping to have a recommendation because of our current relationship with Park Mobile. It might go into for a closed session, the contract negotiations in closed session before next council meeting. But we're hoping to maybe make a recommendation, if not the next council meeting, have an official recommendation, but the one after that. There were, Park Mobile was obviously one of the 5. There were 2 others that I thought that had a very good proposal as far as, they weren't just a little fly-by-night kind of a operation. That, they may not be have a large presence, I'll say, in the Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey region, but they do have a fairly large presence in other metropolitan areas in the U.S. And all of them offered, I'll say, a combination of app, text to park, or call a 1-800 number. So they all provided, I'll say, a cadre of ways to be able to park, pay for the parking electronically. But so it wasn't just, you had to have an app on the phone. You could call a number or text information, which would kind of give you a link to kind of go on an app, or not go on an app, but to pay through an internet website.
So they were all app-based, right?
Well, they're not, I mean, they're all electronic-based to some form or degree. So, they all had app options, yes, but you didn't have to use, just like for Park Mobile, you don't have to use an app. Some of them have a QR code where you can scan a QR code. It takes you to a website where you pay on their website, or you can text and you start the process through a text process, or you call a 1-800 number and you can process the, give your credit card information and pay for parking, through that. So it's not purely just an app, no.
And they all came back with the same cost distribution. User pays all the fees and services, and we get our parking.
They all had different costs, prices, or what their processing fees and merchant costs were going to be to the consumer. They varied, but yes, but all of them agreed that the city would not incur any of those.
Okay, so
those costs.
Our revenue yield, which is what we were concerned with, is across the board. All 5 of these had the same basic revenue yield.
Correct.
Well, one of them had a pretty significant signage charge, even though they were discounting it. By the time you start to think about how many signs would be required, $125 a sign, that has to come out of revenue.
Yeah, but if you actually look at their actual proposal, even though they listed that sign, they discounted that price in their proposal, so it actually worked out to be no charge. And on the one that I think that you're thinking of, it actually, when it says there's a sign charge, but on their proposal form, they kind of say discounted there's a discount at the bottom, and they discount the price of the signs. I'm not saying that some of them don't have a sign charge, but the one that jumped out at me, which I think is the one that you probably are talking about, there was a discount on their summary charge that kind of took that out.
Okay.
But I do think signage is a discussion point, because as soon as we move away from Park Mobile, I mean, there's an inherent cost of, we have all these Park Mobile signs out.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to, if we get new signs for, like Flowbird, I think was one of the vendors, you're going to have to go out and take all our existing signs out and put up new signs. So there's going to be an inherent cost if we switch vendors that's obviously going to be a cost to the city and a manpower.
Yeah,
Not just,
logistical.
I mean, it's a cost in manpower more than, let's say, a physical dollar cost.
Based on what you've seen with the bids and what's entailed, do you anticipate that, and I guess the timeline that you've laid out, that everything would be completed well in advance of, I guess, what you'd consider the traditional summer season? So if there needed to be some type of rollout with a different vendor, that there'd be ample time to ramp up before city really gets very, very.
It's just, once I get the final ratings from the different staff members and we have a discussion with council, that rollout has time factors, because you just don't get 1,000 signs delivered to Cape May City tomorrow. I just don't get after I wait for delivery of those 1,000 signs, I don't install 1,000 signs overnight. So switching vendors it's going to be a discussion point with council and staff on making that final selection.
So generally, over the 5 proposals, from the user's standpoint, are they kind of similar?
I think they're kind of similar, yeah.
Because I think what the city would probably want to avoid is complaints about the new system, if there were going to be a new system.
And that is, when I kind of look at the 3 factors, I think and those are probably the 3 major factors. One, making sure that the city isn't having to pay any of those merchant costs. 2, implementation of it. And 3, our customer being able to not be confused and, just upset. I mean, they're already upset they have to pay for parking.
Yeah, right.
I think everybody agrees with that. You never like to pay for parking, but we want to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And, there again, that's another, that's why I think Park Mobile is so, there's so many different towns in this area that use Park Mobile because of their strong presence in Philadelphia. That regionally, that's a parking vendor that's used a lot because they're the local vendor that's kind of gotten a stronghold. Not saying that if you were from Minneapolis, you might come here and, well, what's Park Mobile? Or if you're coming down from Canada, they may not. So I think, because of the global presence that we have from our residents, I think maybe some of the other shore towns that are more traditional, hey, they have a heavy Philadelphia split, or if you're up in Long Beach Island, they might have a heavy New York, presence. I think here in Cape May we have a much more diverse group of people that are coming here compared to some of the other shore towns.
Yeah. When we looked a couple of meetings ago at the different vendors that are in this field, some of them had a feature that they called space finding, in which you would go on their app and you would be able to identify. Did that come up in any of these bids?
You can't use that. I mean, space finding really only works in controlled lots and parking garages, that they can really track people in and out on a count basis. So that spot finding when it's on-street parking isn't really available for on-street
I
parking.
think 2 of the proposals mentioned reservations and a chart, which it's not applicable to us. So
Right.
Yeah, we
No
wouldn't be able
reason for
to,
it to be in the proposal.
And those vendors, they work, a lot of their component structure is based on, they run parking lots in urban areas.
That's
where-
what I noticed,
Where
yeah.
you can reserve a
yeah,
spot.
San Francisco and
Yeah,
New
where you
York.
can reserve a spot in a parking lot that's got a, whether it's got a person in there or it's, that parking lot's gate controlled to be able to know, hey, you pull in and it tells you to go park in space E5,
Right.
and that's your spot.
Right, right.
So it's not really applicable.
We would have
Even
to-
though they offer that service for on-street parking for how we have it.
Well,
really
they also
isn't
base
available.
their fee structure on that. which
Availability, yeah.
We don't have that, so will they still, the RFP was not responsive to the way that Cape May needs to use the service.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't really consider them one of the,
There was also
Out of the
one that
5
had
vendors.
a monthly subscription charge. Does that mean you, as a user, I would have to pay to have the app on my phone?
there again, I think that one that provides a monthly subscription, they're dealing more towards the parking lot market. So I think they threw a lot of information in their proposal to adds fluff in what they do, but it's really not applicable to what we do.
They
Here
didn't
at
roll
Cape May.
that feature into their bid, though, did they?
Yeah.
They did?
Well, they put it available, but it's not,
Well, I don't know whether it means, even if, I don't, from the way that it reads, and again, there's 300 pages of stuff here, so, it's a lot to go through. They are basing their transaction fees on the expectation that there's going to be revenue from these other sources. It doesn't say subscription fee only for parking lot dwellers. It just says subscription fee. If their expectation is that everybody that uses the parking in Cape May is going to pay for the app, I have a lot of apps on my phone. I don't think I pay for any of them. So to me, that's just a knockout.
and there were 2 vendors that I didn't even, like I said, I think out of the 5, there's 3 that
They
are,
provided a very lovely picture of Cape May Point on their proposal.
What about the, as we roll this new thing out, what about the person who doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have an app, is not living in the 21st century?
well, I think most people at least have a cell phone. I mean, I think the number of people that don't have a cell phone in today's world is such a minority that I don't know if we can, with the technology, I don't know if we can prepare for that small percentage.
It's been a point of discussion in prior, at prior times.
I mean, we do
That's
have,
why
we still have some,
going.
we still have some meters at locations, but, I think that the trend will be over the next year or two to pull them, because the meters have a cost to the city to maintain, to put out, and it is, to collect the money.
Collect the coins, that's
You
the
know, I
big
mean,
charge.
there's a lot of potential liability in collecting coins and, what is the proper way? Like, are we collecting coinage in the most secure form and fashion? And we should probably be moving away from that. I think most services globally are moving away from collecting things with coins and moving towards an electronic format of payment.
Do you anticipate having that discussion with council anytime soon? Is there any, do we need idea generation for how to overcome? We have some population here that does not have a cell phone. And that's been one of the reasons that we still have coins. None of the other municipalities have coin meters anymore. We buy their coin meters so that we can continue to use the guts.
And
The
it's-
decision to move away from coin, I don't think has been made yet, but I would encourage it. But I do think there has to be at least some discussion, consideration for the non-tech savvy people that live in town year-round.
Well, yeah, I do see it as I don't know how much of a problem, but everybody complains about something.
And maybe we make an option that you go to, we offer the beach taggers to sell a parking tag for a certain period of time, and, you get a tag to park, and we figure out something on a limited basis for those non-text out, so there's potential other options.
Visitors, I think, I have no information, I'm just, spitballing here. The visitors, I think, they have cell phones, and it's the full-time residents that have been here for a long time that struggle with change. And if suddenly we can't use coins, and they're not, I see examples of it on some of the local social media sites. So there's a certain segment of the population that just struggles with.
And like I said, maybe the option for that resident that especially lives here in town is they can come to City Hall and buy a.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of different.
A tag that, whether it's a time-limited tag, or you come in and you buy a tag for a certain number, just like you buy a daily beach tag, maybe you buy a day parking tag, and, and we look at that possibility, but that's something we can look at as we get closer to that final day.
Our as a committee, our initial interest, as we were charged to do, was to make sure that whatever new contract we strike with a vendor maximizes our revenue, protects the full amount that we think we want, minimizes operational procedures and costs. And beyond that, I think you're saying to us that these 5 proposals will help us do that. One of them will be the thing we're looking for.
Well, I know the one that we select will not have any cost to the city.
Okay, all right.
And if there is a minimal cost for signage, that's something that we hope to either negotiate away or figure out an alternative.
Okay, so let's say that's fine as a committee, but also recommend to the council that the concept of transition into this fully digitized world is going to be a problem. We don't know how big, but it could be a problem, and it ought to be monitored, and some solution ought to be developed in some way.
I mean, we definitely have seen a steady decline in coinage collected over the last 3 years.
So this first year, under this new contract, maybe we can have someone monitoring complaints, monitoring the amount of because there's meters only in certain places, and if you're in a part of town that only has one of these cell phone operations, and you don't have a cell phone app to get onto it, how do you pay for parking?
Well, and there again, I said, it's not just an app. So if, say you have the old-fashioned flip phone that is not digitally enhanced to be able to use an app,
Right.
you can still make a call or a text option. So there are still other non-app ways to pay for the phone, as long as you have at least a
phone.
phone.
Well, that's something anyway.
We saw in Stone Harbor last year the issues that came up when they went cold turkey,
But
right over from nothing.
I think, but I think you can't really, there were other issues within Stone Harbor happening that issue could partially have been driven not by truly the issue of removing parking meters, but other influences within the government that may have affected that outcry.
But some part of it was, all of it or a part of it was people that could not transition to the app.
And I think there were some other forces going
Yep,
on
I don't
in Stone Harbor over the last
I think
year
those
that-
same forces will be in Cape May.
No, it was a totally different.
Oh, was it?
It's
Oh, it was
it's
a-
a totally different situation. in
A
Stone
turf
Harbor.
squabble, perhaps.
I don't disagree with you that it is going to be a transition issue, but I don't think we should look at Stone Harbor as
No,
that was,
what I'm
I think,
saying
a
is
unique
that
issue.
There is a lesson to be learned there.
You just don't
we
turn them
wanna
off,
make sure
you
that
just don't turn them off in the blind of night without having the discussion beforehand. If that's, because I think that's one of the issues that Stone Harbor did was they just came in the next day and there was no discussion.
And you're aware of the fact that the way that the contract for Park Mobile was written and the way that it was being administered are, at least in the city's opinion, different, right?
I mean, the current, or the
Current.
prior contract, yes, yes, I'm aware of those situations.
So I'm not quite sure where it wound up being. The way that we summarized it was, it very clearly says that the user was supposed to pay all the fees, but I don't think that the way that the contract ended up being interpreted by Park Mobile was their understanding. Their contract now
That's-
is very different.
That's why I said that this will probably be in a closed, a contract negotiation session and closed session prior to any award, because that issue needs to be
I think it's
resolved.
important that we understand their current proposal to make sure that,
I think their current proposal
Seems
is.
very clean.
Is
Yep.
very clean
Yep.
and at least acknowledging of what
Yep.
the prior agreement should have been.
Well, if we get nothing else out of this, then we get that clarified. Plus, we save our revenue.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Paul?
No,
No? That's good. Thanks.
no problem.
Hey,
Thanks, Paul.
we'll see you down the road. Here's something I wanted to share with you to return to the discussion of the tourism fees and that, can I load?
One more.
And that issue of the local sales tax that very few towns can provide. And I wanted to give you some background just to keep clear in everyone's mind the chronology of this issue. So I broke it down by years, and I also found out just recently that, well, we'll get to that part in a minute, but there's an issue with the bonding of the convention hall, which not many people were aware of, and we'll get to that in just a second. So in 1947, the state legislature said that any city of the fourth class, we are a city of the fourth class. There's one of 11 along the coastline. A city is different from a township, a village, a borough, but we're a city. And we, under the terms of that act, can provide a local sales tax. It's probably, when Chris researched it, he indicated it's probably the only example of a local sales tax, and it also survived a legal challenge previously. So any city in this condition can charge a sales tax for the items I listed there in red. Those are the only things that they're currently allowed to charge for. Drinks in restaurants, cover charges at entertainment venues, the same group of accommodations that we already covered in our 3% occupancy tax. Beach chairs, cabanas, rolling chairs, and tickets to theaters, motion pictures, and exhibits. Now, in 1982, the legislature expanded that, not expanded it, but added another use of the money. And it was provided to any of those towns in the statute for the payment of any deficiency between operating expenses and anticipated operating revenues for a convention hall. This is the only place in the statutes that this kind of a funding linkage is established beyond the special legislation created for Atlantic City and the special legislation created for Wildwood, Wildwood, North Wildwood, and I believe Wildwood Crest are involved in that. Now, in 2011, Cape May enacted an ordinance creating a tourism utility, and the tourism utility was for the operation of the convention hall, and that the utility was to fund that operation and, to the extent available, transfer surplus funds to the current fund to contribute to the debt service for the convention hall. That has never happened. No transfer of funds has ever been accomplished to cover that debt service. Now, here's where the problem comes in, because that bond, which was issued in 2013 for $10.7 million, 9.04 of it, which was attributed to the construction of the hall, it was the general belief that that bond was paid off. It has not been paid off. It won't be paid off until the year 2027. And so what's remaining in 2023 is the reality that we have about $3.5 million that we still have to pay between principal and interest. Now, returning to the 1% or the local sales tax issue, this becomes another reason why we ought to be looking carefully at that aspect of the statute that gives us the ability to raise a tax to cover the cost of a convention hall. And given the fact that the city of Cape May has already committed to raising revenues to fund the operation of the hall and the debt service, we need to relook at that 1947 statute, a second reason to look for it, because we have a $3.5 million obligation between now and 2027. Any comments? Questions?
You mentioned that no transfers have occurred. Is that because the tourism and utility has run at a deficit, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So the tourism utility
Yeah.
today and over the course of the longer period of time
Right.
does not generate enough revenue
No.
to pay the debt service.
Right.
Dennis, how much is the beach utility? Did they kick in
They kick in nothing.
nothing at all?
No, no, no.
It seems to me there should be something kicked in there.
There could be, there could be, but the tourism utility has only been generating revenue from two basic sources, two sources, well, three sources, actually. The first source is the profits they make from shows and what have you, obviously. The second source is that the $25, or pardon me, the $50 tourism assessment on mercantile licenses is linked to that as well. And then the third source of revenue is the general fund. The general fund picks up every hole in the budget. Sorry. Picks up every hole in the tourism utility budget and has since 2011. Anything else?
One of the questions that had come up before when we talked about this idea is, how does it get collected? And I realize that's a separate issue
Yeah.
from, from
Yeah, it's an operation.
the need for it. But I suspect that we can provide a number of different ways to justify it.
Right.
We're going to have to come up with something. Something's going to need to be proposed as far as some type of framework for
Right.
for it
I
to
thought
be.
about that too. It's not going to be easy. It's
There is an existing framework because state sales tax is collected routinely every year. And anyone who pays the state sales tax, that mechanism can be used to collect this tax as well. Because what happens, that's what they're already doing with the occupancy tax. They collect all that, it goes to Trenton, and then we get our cut back in the form of a check.
Okay.
So there's a process for it.
Okay. I just think we need to anticipate that that's going to be an issue that's going to be raised when this,
It will be an
As this
issue.
keeps
Yeah,
moving
it
forward.
will be an issue.
so.
And what will also be an issue is why are we doing this at all? Because of the impact on commerce. And that's an issue that needs to be put on the table and discussed.
I think the issue is going to be, we have such a big surplus, that's, people are going, And the other thing I was thinking.
That's a good point.
We should really pull the council people to say, do you have the guts for this? or not? Well, that's a simple way to put it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
they're the ones who are going to take the tomatoes and stuff.
Yeah, and I think we can help the council in that effort by providing them with a comprehensive justification and rationale for what this is and where it comes from.
I was just saying, feel them out, and
Yeah,
Well, but notwithstanding the surplus, we don't know that we're going to run a surplus forever. right?
No, I know that.
But we have.
There's
as
no
you-
reason to think that we're not. I mean,
We have at least 2 utilities that are running at a deficit that the taxpayers are covering, even though the taxpayers may or may not be significant users of those services.
Yeah.
They're intended for visitors. So this proposal, this idea, where it has merit is to fill some of the gaps that we have currently. We had talked at the last meeting or the meeting before about the fact that the city sees virtually no revenue from alcohol sales. The city.
Yeah, that's,
But we have significant costs associated with making sure that, that our streets remain safe. So, that's an example where Trenton is benefiting 6
yeah,
point
I'm
whatever
not for or
percent.
against it. I'm just trying to figure this whole thing out, how it's going to
yeah, how it's going to happen.
evolve.
And it's not, even though we don't know of any instances of the sales tax, there are instances of luxury tax or the occupancy tax that are in place. So this is not that foreign a concept. If you have rented a car recently, there's 7 different taxes that you're paying on your car rental bill, and it's covering, and it drives up the cost significantly, but it doesn't stop people from renting cars. So, I think that it's absolutely important that we find out whether the city has the interest in doing something.
Well, that's what I'm
But
Right.
doing it in a way that is not, I don't know that there's an appetite for a general sales tax, but targeted sales tax, I think that that's something that would make a lot more sense.
And when this issue came into being, over time, there are 2 places where this issue was considered and found to be not enough, Wildwood and Atlantic City. Both of those taxing entities created a thing like this, but it was far more comprehensive. It was larger, and it was designed to support 2 of the one in Asbury Park isn't used anymore, 2 of the largest convention halls on the beach. We don't have that kind of hall. We have a hall that's running in the red, and we use it for a lot of community stuff, basically. We have some concerts there once in a while, but, I mean,
Dennis, do you recall the definition of transient accommodation?
yes, yeah, I do. Would you like to hear it?
Well, so,
I
know
haven't
that today
memorized
that means the Airbnbs and
Yeah, that means
Vrbo's,
the- well-
but that didn't exist in 1947. So would home rentals fall under that definition?
Home rentals, and this is where we have the Airbnb tax. If the rental is offered through a rental agency such as an Airbnb, it's a transient accommodation. If it's rented through a local real estate office, it's not a transient.
Right, I was wondering about the definition back in 1947.
Yeah, it's interesting, there was no definition from 47. There was a later definition in 2019.
And it would likely have the same meaning as we have taken it to know.
Oh, it is the meaning
Yeah.
it is the meaning we know it to be based on our occupancy tax proposal, right? And that's only in 2019. That was in 2019. So there we are. How would you like to proceed? Would you like to think about it some more? Callie?
Well, I know how the businesses feel about this, but I think our next steps as a committee is to speak with council or have Maureen speak with council and find out their appetite. And if they're firmly against it, then I don't think we as a committee should waste our time.
Yeah. How's that sound?
The proposal that you came back with, the opposition from the BID, that was on the idea of a general 1% sales tax.
Yes, and
That's not what we're
right, that's
necessarily
not necessarily what we're talking about, but I do still feel that the business thought towards this would still be against it.
So and I'm just drawing upon this because it's a specific example here
Yeah.
and something we've talked about as a committee.
Right.
If we levied a 1% tax only on alcohol sales, would the businesses object to that?
I think the businesses that are affected by it, but I think with education, the rest of the businesses would say, wait, we do all of this stuff and we pay all of this money to the city and you don't actually do that, I think the rest of the businesses might get in line. Education is key.
Yep, thanks,
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
Me,
Yeah.
I think if it was limited to alcohol sales, you wouldn't get as much, you know.
well, a $7 beer, it's 7 cents.
It's, right, it's not a lot of, passing the buck, but I do still think that a lot of education on the new laws from the way things are changing at the state level, the way things currently exist as far as alcohol establishments, where their tax money is going. I just, education is key. It's not something that we're strangers to. We did it with the low-speed vehicles, it's just a matter of making sure people are informed so that you don't get an uproar about,
Yeah.
you just did this tax and you just did that tax, and we pay 56% of the mercantile licenses in Cape May are paid by Cape Resorts, things like that. People are gonna notice that you're adding another
This is not a
thing
tax,
on.
this wouldn't be charged to the business, this would be charged to the people on their purchases. So it would be, if we used an example of 1%, if I buy a beer, I give Trenton today 6.625%?
Well, isn't it up to the business on how they charge?
No, it's a
Does it
sales tax,
become-
so it would be charged on
Yeah.
the bill.
But they can reduce their cost, and
Sure.
it's $6.93, and then they give this, that's,
Well, yeah, it doesn't increase their operating costs. It increases their negative interaction with the customer who says, why is this beer costing this much? But if it's any consolation, in 1947, the original statute also said that none of this money is to be paid for by the merchant, that it must be passed on to the user. So, I mean, it's clear that it's a user fee.
I can see where the merchants, if they had a lot of different items,
Yeah.
But if you stick with the alcohol, I think it'd be a lot easier.
And if you look
A lot
at,
cleaner, I think.
if you look at those 5 things that
Because you-
that the statute taxes, what is Cape May on there? We already get the room piece, beach chairs and cabanas.
Yeah.
We don't have a theater. I'm not sure what places of amusement would be. Chris might have to tell us what that is, but a cover charge, does any place in town charge a cover?
Not that I'm aware of.
Carney's,
Carney's might in the summertime, yeah.
yeah.
Just to get in?
Yeah.
Oh,
They
okay.
have somebody at the door.
All right. And then, but actually, the biggest target is
That
drinks.
wouldn't
And
bother me any, but
the biggest target of the statute is a drink in a restaurant, cafe, bar, hotel, or other similar establishment.
I still think that it needs to be worded appropriately and clearly as, this is what it is, this is why, this
Right.
is who pays for it.
Yeah, basically a fact sheet, which,
Yeah.
which is,
Well,
what is, here's the, I'll write this up if you want me to do this for next meeting. Here it is. It's a neutral statement of what it is, what it affects, and what it could generate.
Yeah.
And then, because this becomes, I guess, the same kind of approach we've taken with everything we say. We're charged with thinking about ways to do things differently, raise revenue, protect revenue. And we pass them on to the council. We think about them, we craft a proposal, and we pass it on to the council. If the council doesn't want to do it, that's okay, because we're an advisory committee. And I think, I don't know if anybody's watching on the live streaming, but I think it's important to say that we are just an advisory committee. There have been comments around town lately that this is somehow policy, that we generate policy.
A lot of people don't understand what Mtrac is
Yeah.
or what our purpose is, what our mission is.
Yeah, we don't adopt policy. We advise the city council on matters concerning taxation and revenue.
Yeah,
And that's all we do.
yeah.
Yeah, if they want to turn it into policy, that's,
I mean, and, you know, 3 years ago, we looked at the idea of occupancy tax and why the city was passing on $1 million, $1.5 million a year because they didn't raise the We told them that.
Yeah.
And they decided to fix it, so that's great. I mean, they took that one and they ran with it, and it's now operational, and nobody's complaining about it.
And merchants are selectively choosing to charge their customers now for their credit card fees.
Yeah.
That didn't exist a year and a half ago.
No.
But it's become
Yeah.
much more prevalent.
And this goes back to almost the first meeting, you may recall. The first meeting we had, and it was that we explained that there's a huge revenue stream running through Cape May, and the city gets almost none of it. Most of it's going to the state. Increasing level, what's going on in the business of Cape May, because Cape May is a business.
Well, I agree with Bob and Callie. I think that we should be checking with council next to see how much of their appetite is. But I do think, as Callie said, that it's important that it be stated very clearly
Yeah.
that we're not talking about a general sales tax.
Right.
This is specifically
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the targeted areas that are allowable within the law.
Right.
And as long as they're clear on that, then they can make an informed decision.
Correct, absolutely. Okay,
yeah,
we all okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
you know, not to change the subject, but do you think if the city set up a better enforcement on some of the, you know, the things that we could really look at, it would generate more money?
well, you know, there was an article in the
Talked about
paper,
this.
a
We've talked about this before.
we have, and there was an article in the paper, a citizen approached the council last month at a meeting,
Oh, I didn't even see that.
and suggested that, I think I got the gist of the comments, that Mtrac should be doing more in terms of getting into the operational budget of the city and how much it's spending and how effective it is. Did you read that article?
I was there for
I
the
don't
meeting.
think that's our
You-
charge.
Well, yeah,
I hear what they're saying, but,
The mayor wouldn't agree with you, Bob.
huh?
The mayor wouldn't agree with you. He said that he does think that Mtrac should be charged with reviewing.
Well,
Yeah,
if he wants it,
and the,
he's got to
Were
run.
they
well,
expensive?
actually, we've already done quite a
We
bit
do,
of that.
yeah. And that was Maureen's point, a counterpoint to the person
Yeah.
that spoke up during the public, that we've already now instituted cost centers,
Yeah.
program-based budgeting, as a result of the work that we've done. That wasn't a revenue item. That was something that we got involved in.
Yeah, and also mercantile licenses, we're getting involved in that,
Should
residential
we
rental
be
fees.
telling the police department how many body cameras to buy? No, that's not
Well,
our
that's-
charge.
that's-
We can keep it high level.
That's where I'm going. I don't think this committee ever wants to or should get into the weeds of the operating budget of the city. But that's a bad mistake, because we have a city manager and an assistant city manager and a CFO who are all responsible for doing that. And so what we want to do, I think what we want to do is our charge, which is to look at revenue sources and to see how the money is spent in a general way. We don't want to know how many paper clips are being bought in some office. It's not our job. But our job is to say, as you constantly say, we need to enforce some of the stuff we recommend. The city needs to be able to say, we know how many licenses, we know how many bedrooms are in that house, we know how many people are renting a house and have a mercantile license. Those are the kinds of things we need to make sure the city is doing, because if we don't do that and they don't do that, then all the work we do is useless. Because if we have a proposal that the council adopts on anything, and nobody knows if it's even being implemented, why did we waste our time doing this?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think there should be one person dedicated to that. I mean, these restaurants, they're supposed to pay so much per table, and in the summertime, you don't know if they slide in 3 or 4 more tables.
Of course not, and whatever.
Nobody goes and checks.
And we also know that every single residential and commercial property in town is required by our code to have off-street parking, for example. No, and we don't know if that's,
But if it was enforced somehow, we could maybe make them pay more, so,
right.
you know.
And we would make them not so much pay more, but help the city adopt to the problem that it's being created by, for example,
Yeah, well-
not enough residential parking. And that was originally why we started talking about this sales tax issue. And we shouldn't call it the 1% because nobody recommended 1%. There's no such thing as a 1%. It's a local sales tax on a couple of things that go on in town. That's a lot of, it'll be a lot of money, and at our previous meeting, we know how much money that was. That'll be a lot of money. That money should be used for something that can't be done right now because there's not enough money to do it. For example, a comprehensive, reliable parking system, number one. Number two, or a shuttle system. Number two, paying for the bond, the $3.5 million left on our convention hall bond that everybody in town was walking around thinking it was already paid off.
Well, you know, I think it was the last election, really, that they were saying it was going to be paid off like last year, I think.
Yeah.
Because they said the firehouse was coming up with $5 million, and the convention hall was going to
It
be.
was coming off the book, it was
That's
going
what
to
they
be,
were saying
Yeah.
in the,
well,
I don't know what happened in between there, but.
I don't know either. Thank God we got a new CFO, I guess, maybe. But the point is, the taxpayers are on the hook for the next 3 years
Yeah.
for $3.5 million. And it's nestled somewhere deep in the budget. And we found it. So,
You mean Leon may found it?
no, Leon didn't find it. Our new CFO found it. Anyway, so there we are. I'll set up that document, I'll pass it around, and we'll see how it floats.
And Bob, on the enforcement aspect, we'll be presenting the short-term rental analysis to council on the 20th. And that includes our endorsing a software solution for following up on the short-term residential housing issue.
I think it's important.
So that
Yeah, that's gonna be-
the city
that-
realizes additional revenue, and it's also being done in a fair way.
I mean, I don't think we have to have a big police force to do this.
Nope.
We just need like somebody that's really dedicated to go out there and look,
Yeah, and we don't need even
see
a police.
what's going on.
And this is probably not the best use for a trained, competent police officer either. It's somebody, but not a police officer.
No, it's not a police officer. It's just somebody
All
that's charged with going out, and it's an inspector is what it is, to see that the ordinance is being followed, that's all.
All right, I'll set this up for distribution. Martin, since you mentioned that you're coming up next to council, why don't you give us number 7, an update on the shared services?
So the shared service agreement presentation, which we had worked on and brought to the committee several times last fall, finally did go to council on Tuesday night. My assessment was that it was very well received. I think there was a significant level of interest in looking at the proposal that the committee made of putting together a process that results in a higher level of partnership with Cape May Point, West Cape May, so that they are aware of what they're paying for, what they're receiving, and we also have greater clarity on how much of the expenses that we're incurring on those municipalities' behalf are being covered by the fees. We had talked as a committee about there being a fixed component and a variable component. We took council through that math, and I even paused at one point to make sure that there was a clear understanding and there were no comments to the contrary. So I think they got it. And I think that generally, it was about a 20-minute presentation followed by about 25 minutes of dialogue. If you haven't seen it, I think it's worth watching. But I think that the fact that there was as much follow-up conversation showed the level of interest of council to go forward with that proposal. I expect that, I didn't receive any sense that there was any reluctance to it at all.
Yeah, it was well received. Yeah, it was. So we're in good shape. Good. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Steve. You guys did a great job on that.
Okay, well, Martin took the lead, but it was, I think it was a really good exercise.
Hey, Steve, when I throw a softball
To go
at you,
through?
just
Okay, yeah, I know. I appreciate that. But just touching on that for a moment, I thought, that in seeing how, the city listened and how they responded to this, I mean, you could see the wheels turning as far as, with the proposal, with the idea that just how transparent it is. You're putting, as Martin put it, opening up the kimono. You're showing them just all the costs and all the expenses that are associated with the process.
Yeah.
And when you're just putting the numbers on the table, it's really, it seems to be a very straightforward exercise to be able to do a presentation and talk with the partner communities. So, we're not looking to make money off of this, but we're looking to do, as you said, is not subsidize
Fair and equal.
the other communities
Yeah.
as well. So, I mean, look, I could tell you, I was watching it remotely, but you could see the heads nodding up and down. Okay, so it looked as though there's an acknowledgement and
Yeah,
understanding.
and that's, yeah, you're right, and that's the core component of that whole proposal was the notion that the city is willing and wants to recut their budget so that they can do a program-based analysis of everything they're doing in order to make a better policy going forward. And that's really what our proposal was. It was a program-based budgeting. It's the first one we've used. Now, that's a good segue to this, and let me throw this around for you, because we've talked about this a couple times, but there's a big buzz in the city now, actually being caused by the Taxpayers Association, who is very interested in,
More, Dennis?
yeah, very interested in doing something about the cost of recycling. And I asked Kevin if he would give me some information on what the recycling program is and how much it's costing us. This is the first draft of information which I just received from him. And TPA's position, I think they're going to have a meeting next week about it at Convention Hall next Thursday. But their position is the city subsidizing recycling services for commercial enterprises, which is one aspect of the issue. The larger issue is, what's the city spending on recycling? Is it a good idea? Is it the idea we thought it was going to be 7 years ago when we started it? Is it costing us money? How much money are we making, recovering cost-wise because we're recycling? Would a vendor-based approach be more efficient? How much are we spending on equipment, capital? There's a capital budget connected with this where we bought trucks with bonds, which were not cheap. And there's also, because we're doing it in the city, there's also a significant operational cost. And this is what Kevin's paper here is reviewing for us. And you can see that the disposal budget is going down, and the recycling salaries and wages are going up. And that segment of our municipal operation is expanding to a point where it's costlier to do it in-house than it would be to hire a vendor. The other issue on recycling, this is kind of like a third issue. A third issue is the trash collection in the city is one of the most disorganized features of this whole town, because everybody's responsible for getting their own trash out somewhere. Everybody hires some vendor. There's 5 or 6 vendors that operate the process. And all these 5 or 6 vendors have all the customers all over town, and they are constantly driving around town, serving their customers on a daily basis. The problem is that all of these trucks are all over town every day. And is that the most efficient way to do this kind of thing? Could there be, or should there be, ordinances involving recycling and involving trash collection in which vendors are limited to serving zones on certain days? And this gets into the point we're just talking about, the operation. Does Mtrac get into the level of operation? Yeah, it does, in this extent, because this is something that's going on in the city, which is essentially costing us money. And
Dennis, I'll tell you, we had a trash guy, of course, collecting our trash, and somebody told us about a Brand X, and my wife said, that's too cheap, you can't. Well, we called them, and the Brand X did it for like half of what we were paying this,
yeah,
you know.
right.
So I don't know, it's like a competition there, and you
Yeah.
get a great guy. It's
Yeah,
cheap.
we're like the stadium where there's a huge competition going on, and we don't have any
Well,
control
now,
over it.
and then going back when they started recycling, they did have certain sections were to be collected on certain days.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
right.
and that worked out, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that could solve that problem. An ordinance saying that if you're a vendor, you have to tell us what zone you're serving.
But here's what I'm looking at. I live here in this house, and or somebody else lives in this house. I have certain vendor, and he has Brand X.
Yeah,
Now, you're gonna have 2 trucks.
both those trucks coming
Yeah.
down, yeah, right.
So you mean they're all gotta be there the same day? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's kind of what,
I know what you're saying. I'm just wondering how it would work out.
I don't know. I really don't know. But this is an issue where I think we should begin with a program-based analysis of what it's costing and how it's being funded. And it's not just the 16 trash cans in front of a bar on a Thursday morning. It's all of these things.
Well, are we talking about residential now or
Yeah,
business?
yeah.
Residential too?
Right, residential. Well, see, the residential places are, the city provides recycling for them, but the trash is a privately contacted vendor,
Also, I mean,
which,
things change, and I understand that, but we looked at this way back.
yeah,
And the problem was, when you have somebody that wants to go out to bid, one of these trash vendors, they look at every stop in the community.
right.
Well, in reality, in the wintertime, they have like, I don't know, maybe a
Yeah, I know.
fourth
Yeah, right.
the stops. But yet.
They can do New
they're
Jersey
gonna-
Avenue
They're
and-
going to
and,
base it on every stop. And it really was very expensive to have it, trash pickup. Then you get into the same thing that they got into with the recycling. The trash trucks cost a lot. And then you get into unions.
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and
that's what this chart is.
And one of the things with the, I'm trying to remember now, but there was a lot of injuries on the trash trucks, believe it or not. Back injuries from
The
hauling.
recycling trucks.
Huh?
On the recycling trucks.
Yeah, yeah, and the council has
Wouldn't know about the
actually,
injuries on the trash trucks. These companies pull out.
Yeah.
There's no interest in anybody coming in because it is a small city, and, you know, the people cancel the services in the wintertime.
yeah, and with recycling, it remains to be seen whether or not there'll be any private vendor who would want to recycle, because it's not a business.
Now,
that
by coincidence, I happen to have a conversation with someone that's in that business. They would be interested in bidding, but that's all.
Okay.
But the vulnerability, Dennis, is that if you get to a point where there is no competition, one of two things happens. The costs go up, okay? Or the access to services goes down.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't make a lot of, bringing trash collection and recycling, which are very comparable activities, under one umbrella, one or the other, probably makes sense. I don't know which one it should be.
Yeah.
Well, West Cape May does, used to, I don't know if they still do. They originally bought a truck that was divided in half. One side was for recycling, the other was for trash. But I don't know if that ever worked.
We have a private carrier in my other home, and that's exactly what they do. Both are out, both are on the curb, and they're picked up at exactly the same
mean,
time and
that-
put in
if
different
that-
sections of the truck.
Maybe that would work out. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah, we-
throwing out what I do know.
The cost of the trucks has gone up so much, okay?
Well,
that
it's the cost, but it's the maintenance too.
We can't,
You have
I-
to have
I
a
think-
mechanic that can work on it.
That's where the program-based budgeting approach comes into
Yeah.
play. You really need, once you open the door, it's not as simple as saying, do we want to recycle? We need to find out how much this is costing. We need to find out that before we do
Well,
anything
the
else.
other thing was, as you well know, now the aluminum prices and the paper, it's
It's,
not what
there's
it
no
used
market,
to
yeah.
be.
now, Dennis, just to make sure that I'm understanding it, the top chart, that's how much it's costing us to get rid of the recycling.
Right,
That's up in Burley,
yeah,
okay? And the bottom half are the city's salaries.
Right.
And,
Yep.
okay. I'm not quite, I mean, it's interesting that the budget exactly went up
yeah,
in the lower part as much to the dollar as it went down
yeah.
in the upper part.
Right.
All right? Now, the actuals are different from that. I'd want to, what
Well, that's
what I want to
partially,
understand.
before we go, Martin, that's partially, as they do in the budget, that's a plug number, that's a projected number. The actuals are, the expended numbers are really what you want to look at.
Right, but if we look at, for example, the costs above to get rid of what's been collected, it went from 215,000 down to 79,000. Is that because we have less volume? What changed that
Well,
caused it?
I'll
It's a
tell you
good
what
question,
changed.
and I don't know.
This is what I
Yeah.
think changed. Don't hold me to any stuff, but there was a time where the city had a vendor that was collecting the recyclables, and somebody failed to make a contract. And all of a sudden, the city was stuck, and they had to run out and buy a truck to do their own recycling. That's, I think, the area you're looking at. Now, Stacy can tell you for sure, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
she's got a better memory. I'm getting old, my memory's...
So I happened to go to the Cape May County MUA yesterday, and it cost me $7 to get rid of a rug that we didn't want anymore. So they weigh your vehicle coming in, and they weigh your vehicle going out.
I go up to
And-
Burley all
okay.
the time.
So in 2017, that process cost the city $215,000. Now it only costs $79,000. I doubt that the rates went down. We have to be hauling less out of the city,
That's what it would look like.
right? But then at the same time, how did we think we were, what changed in terms of the people power? Well, we went from 31,000 to 141,000. Yeah, I mean,
You know, there's
Minimum
there's a
wage.
lot
Same
to
city.
this, because
Minimum wage.
Yeah, right.
not that much in 7
at
years.
one time, the city was using a vendor, and when they go up to Burley,
Yep.
they get weighed.
Yep.
Well, what we found out was the vendor was going in and collecting a lot from West Cape May.
Oh.
Then coming in, and guess who was getting charged?
Gotcha. Okay, that's what
I mean,
happened.
there's a lot of these
Sure.
crazy things
Yep.
that go on.
Yep.
And they just, somehow somebody caught this.
Yep.
And I'm just telling you, these little things that happened over the years.
No, that makes sense, because it went from 234,000 in 2018 to less than half of that.
You gotta watch.
in
you
1
gotta
year.
Watch these
Yep.
guys, you
Yep.
know?
Okay.
So there are all kinds of problems like that.
But I just, to me, it doesn't, as a homeowner, and as someone that's interested in what happens within the city that we live in, I don't know that it makes sense to bifurcate the two services. They're identical services. It's a truck that comes and picks up a barrel in front of your house. So I would like to think that it can be more organized if it is either all done by the city or all privatized. Having it half pregnant to me has never really made a lot of sense.
Well, like I said, when we looked at it, the privatization was very costly. And that was one of the problems that we found out, that when they go out to bid, they have to bid for, the whole city.
So I had to contract separately. I had to find Waste Management to come and pick up my trash, and I had to pay for the barrel, and I pay on a quarterly basis. Okay, it's nothing to do with the city. The city, the recycling that gets picked up at my curb, I pay for through my taxes. So I'm not saying that we should make garbage disposal free to residents, okay? I'm saying none of it's free. It's a matter of how you
I'm not
built.
against it,
Yep.
we can itemize and try to figure out what's the most expensive, but then you better talk to these vendors and see where their head is. You get a couple prices out there,
Because I had heard as well, it was the decision was driven around the purchase of a truck or two. And, I don't know how old that truck is now, and if it's getting to the point where it now needs to be replaced, maybe it is.
they've
the right
probably
time.
replaced it already.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing, these trucks, to work on them, it's just not the old mechanic that can do these things. They're very sophisticated, It's- You pay for a mechanic like that, you're paying big bucks. Or else you get somebody that don't know what they're doing and they make bigger problems. What the heck's a tennis doing over here?
I'm getting something set up.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to interrupt the conversation. So anyway, actually, this is just an introductory to the issue, and I think we need to get this pursued, just like we did the other stuff. So I'll continue to gather the data, and then next meeting, we'll decide how we're going to handle it, because there's a lot more data that needs to be collected, so.
There's a lot of things that click in.
Now, another issue that I want you to talk about is this issue, if I can get this computer set up properly. It's the issue of the county budget. I can't get this thing working, so let me see if I can just pass this out.
It's getting dark in here. I think the light switch to these lights is somewhere up on that second floor up.
Yeah, I think it is.
Just comment.
This is we had talked about the county budget and the county taxes in particular, not so much budget, but taxes. So I went back and pulled out this chart, which goes back about 10 years. And it's a look at the tax rates. And you all know that the rates are calculated by, how much it costs each entity to provide the services, and then it becomes a percentage of the times $100 of the property value. If you look at this chart, you can see pretty clearly that the municipal share of our tax rate, which is currently 1.074, the municipal part of that has remained fairly constant over the last 10 years. There's been not a whole lot of difference. Our school district has remained also very steadily constant and very minimal in terms of a tax rate. And so there's three big chunks out of our taxes that go, two of them leave town.
Yeah.
Basically, is the point we were making a minute ago about sales taxes that go to the state. So we pay our taxes primarily 0.37 to the county and 2.69 to the regional school district. And the reason I wanted to show you this chart, because it graphically shows that for the first time, the county government is taking more of our property tax than the municipal government ever did. So when folks complain about their taxes, one of the reasons is this increase in costs. Over time, at the bottom of this chart, you can see that over time, the annual percentage increases are significant when it comes to the county government. In fact, as you notice over the side, the right side, there's been a 52% increase in the tax rate for county government taxes.
25% of that's just in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay, you look at 52% over the last 10, yeah, and most of it's happening just recently. Now, this chart here shows the county budget. And this currently sits at $215 million. So in terms of where they get their revenue, and this is Mtrac's focus, where they get their revenue is increasingly coming from property taxes. In the current budget, 2023, 75% of the county budget comes from property taxes. 5 years ago, it was 71%. Last year, it was 69%. And one of the reasons is that middle line, which is revenue other than property taxes. That seems to vary quite a bit, as you can see. But the point of this is that if we're concerned with property tax impact and use, we need to begin looking at what the county is doing with over half of our taxes. Why is it that this trend is happening? I'm working with Paul to get somebody from the county government to come and meet with us and give us an idea of what we're getting for our money and why this trend is happening. What are these other sources of revenue and why are they so variable? And what can we do to suggest to the county that there may be other ways to raise revenue than simply property taxes? Compounding this problem is that the city uses a rateable evaluation system to calculate property taxes. The county uses a different one. The county uses market value, current market value, and we use assessed value, which, as we talked about a couple of meetings ago, we haven't had a revaluation in 15 years. So this has all the makings of sort of like a perfect storm kind of deal. There's a lot of things happening in the county budget and our budget that doesn't look good. That wasn't meant to emphasize what I said. That was a message on my phone. Every time I say something significant, I hit a little button under the table. That goes on. So,
Dennis, what's district? You mentioned regional school. What is district?
that's our elementary school.
Local
up
school.
the street, the local school district.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I'm dumping this all on you, and not for any other reason than I think this is going to be an emerging and a consistent issue that we're going to be working on, and kick it around amongst you and your immediate family. And next time, we're going to try and focus on a way to approach this. Hopefully, somebody from the county will come to visit us and begin to give us an explanation. There's some good reasons why the county's budget is going up, and there are some things that we are finally getting back from the county. And we ought to be happy about that, like the library, for example, the Lafayette can begin to make some judgments about whether or not we can help them. So that's that issue. Any ideas, comments, thoughts?
Do we know how much of the 161,000 revenue from property tax is from Cape May?
Yeah, I have a chart, and I didn't do that, but I can break that out for you. Yeah.
I would think that it would be interesting to know what the net is. How much of it, I mean, there is a lot of money that comes back from the county
Yeah,
to Cape May.
Yeah, and well, there's a lot of services that come back.
Right.
We need to put price tags on that.
All the grant money, grants aren't free. That's.
No, they're not free, that's what I was going to say.
So,
Yeah.
you know, if our grant activity has increased, and if that grant activity, the receipt of grants is tracking with
Like the library.
more money is being raised because they're increasing the appropriations, and therefore
Yeah.
more money is coming back.
I agree.
It may not be as bad, but it still is, looking at it the way that it is, with a 52% increase in 10 years, that's,
Yeah, and that's,
Oh, excuse me.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think one thing, the employees have almost doubled since I worked up there.
Yeah.
Well, I just know in the prosecutor's office, it may be
Yeah.
more than quadruple.
And if you go onto the county website, and just look at all of the things they actually do, it's quite incredible.
Oh, I mean, even the jail is,
The jail, I mean, it goes from everything from the jail to the nursing home to,
well, they got out of the nursing home.
well, that may be, you know, how.
That'd still be in.
How does that factor into the budget? That may be a decision where they're attempting to do what we are attempting to do. So that's a good, the point is, this is what we know about the budget. I think we're one step ahead of most people and most taxpayers in Cape May, because I don't think it's well-known or well appreciated that our taxes are really going more to the county than they are to the city. And so when taxpayers complain about their taxes, look at the municipal government line. Look at what this city has been able to do with all the things they've been able to do, and the tax rate hasn't changed. Now, a lot of that is because the property values haven't changed to a certain degree, but when we ever do a reval,
Well, the other,
you're in trouble, by the way.
yeah, I am.
If,
I'll tell you another thing, the county's got a big bill, is the technical school.
yeah, they run the school.
And they have special services.
Right.
Those schools are very expensive.
Yep. Yeah. And the other thing the county runs, and it's actually not even in their budget, it's a commission, the Bridge Commission. They're in charge of all the bridges on the Ocean Drive.
Well, that's separate, that's a separate
It
authority.
is, but how much of it drifts into it's just like Convention Hall. If the tolls don't meet the cost, how much of the general fund is being used to subsidize that?
I thought they had to,
No, well, we have bodies in this town that are supposed to be self-sufficient, and they're not.
well, I don't know, I just figured they were.
No, the beach utility is not self-sufficient.
No, I'm talking about the bridge authority.
I'm talking about the same thing. We have these standalone entities that are supposed to stand alone, and they don't.
Yeah.
And so the county's got them too.
Well, some of the bridges too, Dennis are state-owned, like the George Redding Bridge is state.
Yeah.
I think is Stone Harbor Bridge? I don't know.
Well, that's a county road.
I don't know that there's much the TPA is going to be able to do, or we're going to be able to do to slow down the spending.
No, I'm not,
What I think would be-
I'm really, that's a secondary goal. I want to, before we slow down the spending, we have to elevate the awareness.
So what I would want to try to focus on is specifically how much money are we sending and how much is
Right.
coming back.
Right.
So if we're sending more and more, because it's based upon property values, not assessed values,
Yep.
properties have gone up a little bit in value over the last few years. So if we're pulling more of our weight of the county because of that assessment, that would be important to me to be able to see.
Yeah, and that's
But
our,
also, if
next set of data.
if more of that is, if more is flowing back, then there's a little bit of a quid pro quo that I become a little bit more comfortable with. I'm not sure that we can, we all benefit from the rising property values in Cape May, but as long as the services that we get are greater annually than they were the year before.
Yeah, and
You feel a little bit better about it.
that remains to be developed. If you look at it, this is an elephant in a dark room. And all I want to do is go in there with the tape measure and see how big this thing is, because we don't know. And it's taking over half of our property tax.
Dennis, I think the counties are a separate tax other than the assessment. Like, in other words, the county tax, or county library tax is separate from.
Yes, it is. No,
It's separate from the way they assess, so I don't know if you could count the libraries.
well, no, there's, when we look at the, if you look at the tax rate chart, this one here, when it says county, and on the tax rates, 2013, 2023, that number includes the county government, the county library system, and,
You added them together?
yes, and the county open spaces.
Okay, so you added them together. Okay, I was just trying to clarify that one.
Yeah, no, I did that because it's county.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, right, right. And I also wanted to make the chart a little less,
That makes sense.
okay? Anything else? Anything else for the good of the order? Callie, what do you have to say for yourself?
Not much today.
Okay,
I did see an interesting chart, actually, that you might enjoy. I'll send it to you.
okay, good. I love charts.
I know you do.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? So next time we'll have that,
Wait a minute, Dennis.
nobody wants to go up to the balcony and turn the light on.
I'm not even sure where that switch is up.
I think it is up there. I think it's over there, but we'll skip that. Okay. All right? All right, good. I hope we have our members back next week. Mary's gone for the duration, right? But
She'll be
Russell,
back when it's warm.
No,
she'll be back for one more.
Oh, she is? April? Oh,
I think she said she's coming back for one more after this, yeah. All right. I'll see you next time. Let's adjourn. Thanks, it was a good meeting.
oh, for the good of the order, the next time would be March 7th. That's the first Thursday.
March 7th?
March, second Thursday. Okay, right, March 14th, thank you.
Yeah,
I was lining up the lines on the
right,
calendar app.
March 14th.
March 14th.
Okay, good. Thank you.